One thing I've noticed, Premier, while I've been here, is that Northerners seem to have, I might almost call it obsession about the Igbos. Could you perhaps explain that to me?
Well, the Igbos are more or less the type of people whose desire is mainly to dominate everybody. If they go to a village, to a town, they want to monopolize everything in that area. If you put them in a labor camp as a laborer, within a year they will try to emerge as headman of that camp.
Welcome to my channel, where we discuss everything on all things politics, economy, and development in Nigeria and around the world. That was the premier of Northern Nigeria, Sir Ahmed Bako, speaking to a British journalist and explaining to the British journalist who observed Northern obsession with the Igbos. And that Sir Ahmed Bako said that that obsession was because Igbos were domineering people. They want to dominate their environment. Now that stereotyping was reinforced recently when Professor Ahmed Bako of the Usmanu Danfodio University Sokoto, UDUS, recently delivered a controversial 50th Inaugural Lecture titled The Igbo Factor in the History of the Intergroup Relation and Commerce in Nigeria, Opportunities and Challenges. That is a subject we're going to talk about. This narrative that Igbos want to dominate, or Igbos set out to dominate, as captured in this lecture, which has generated a lot of controversy. And to show that he was wrong in his characterization of the Igbos' pursuit of education. He missed the point on the essence of the Igbos' pursuit of education. Because in the lecture, Professor Bako was alleging that the Igbos set out to dominate Nigeria. That was why they were literally in rush, or in what you can call deliberate pursuit for education, that they want to use it to dominate Nigeria and not to make Nigeria better. Because the way he put it, when we get to the meat of the whole story, is that the Igbos were gearing towards dominating Nigeria and not to develop Nigeria. So that's what we're going to talk about now. And if you are new to my channel, you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell. When you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, anytime I have a new video, you'll be among the first to know. God bless you. Now, without boring you with details of that lecture, some of the issues that he raised, Professor Bako raised, obviously pondering to well-known stereotype, is the claim that Igbos have set out to dominate Nigeria. He claimed that the Igbos, in actual fact, this is what he said, I'm quoting him now. He said, the Igbo, in actual fact, from the 1950s, started sending their sons and daughters to Europe and America for higher education, all with the hope of eventual domination of the country, not necessarily for developing it for the benefit of the nation. In other words, he is laying a serious allegation against the Igbos when they started sending their children to go and study abroad in the United States and in Europe, that they did it deliberately for their own selfish interest and not to develop the nation. But we know that that is not true, and that is what the impression we want to correct in this video. That was why a lot of people look at it as being provocative and also inaccurate, his assessment of the Igbo. What the Igbo did was basically to take advantage of education so that they could be competitive in colonial and post-colonial Nigeria. And it is no different from what is happening in the world today. Why are we spending tons of money in education today? It is to help make sure that our kids are as competitive as other kids around the world. That was basically what the Igbos did. And they achieved a lot of results in that. And so that we'll be able to appreciate the Igbos' pursuit of education and then understand the stereotype of Professor Bako, who obviously was influenced by that kind of statement by Sir Ahmed Bako on the Igbo dominance or domineering spirit. Now, Professor Bako was only reinforcing the stereotyping of the Igbo made popular by the Premier of Northern Region, Sir Ahmed Bako. Because Sir Ahmed Bako, you heard him clearly on that interview when he was asked by a British journalist about the Northern obsession with the Igbos, in which he said, well, the Igbos are more or less a type of people whose desire is mainly to dominate everybody. If they go to a village, to a town, they want to monopolize everything in that area. If you put them in a labor camp as a laborer, within a year, he will try to emerge as the head of the camp, and so on. Now, it's a subject that I have already addressed in my book, The Igbo Phenomenon, which you can see on your screen. The other book is available on Amazon. And if you just type the title of the book and the author's name in your Google space, it will take you to Amazon platform. That book is available on ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Amazon is world's #1 in print on demand. They will deliver it to your doorstep if you order it. That book, I responded adequately to this issue of Igbo dominance by Sir Ahmed Bako. Now let us move on to the issue at stake, the Professor Bako's lecture. Now, the Professor Bako's stereotyping of Igbos as wanting to dominate everyone was also common, not only in Northern region, but also in Western region, where Samuel Ladoke Akintola, Premier of Western Nigeria, lamented, and I quote, Yoruba have University of Ibadan and University of Lagos, and we still have Igbo dominating our institutions. Here was also Akintola, a Premier of Western region, complaining that Igbos are dominating University of Ibadan and University of Lagos that were located in Yoruba land. So he said, Yorubas have the University of Ibadan and University of Lagos, and we still have Igbo dominating our institutions. Now, just to show that this is now a nationwide issue, and that even Obasanjo in recent time has said it, that the Igbophobia is real. So it's not a new thing, but it's also important to be giving the accurate historical aspect of what happened about the Igbos sending their children abroad. Because it is interesting that Bako himself is a professor of history, but he's not the only person who reads books on history. Some of us will also read books on history, and he is not the only one. He is not the only authority. And it's also like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie talked about the dangers of a single story. So that's always good to hear the other side of the story. Now, back to Professor Bako's claim that Igbos were sending their sons and daughters to Europe and America for higher education to dominate Nigeria. for domination's sake, because he was saying that it was just for domination's sake and not to develop it. He was absolutely wrong. The Igbo leaders and families had come to understand at that time that the future is education, and they began to key into it. They began to key into it so that they could be competitive. What they did was remarkable, to be frank. What they did was remarkable because it was through that effort that they were able to compete for opportunities in the colonial and post-colonial Nigeria. Given that education did not start in the Igbo communities earlier, because if you look at the history of education in Nigeria, education started in Western region, because that was because of East geography. Okay, East access to the sea. The first Europeans came to Yoruba land, Lagos. In fact, let us talk about Lagos, and started expanding from there. The same thing also happened in Calabar. So the Yorubas and the Calabars were the first people to embrace Western education. Also note that Calabar was the first capital of Nigeria before the capital was moved to Lagos. And you look at those two cities, they were all tied to their link to the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so it was easy access. So they were the first to embrace education, to know what education is all about, Western education as we know it today. But once the Igbos realized the importance of education in the competitive colonial Nigeria, they started sending their sons and daughters to Europe and America, mostly by community effort, town unions, and what have you. They began to mobilize people, even as long as they could identify a boy or a girl in their community who was highly educated, who was intelligent. Even if the parents do not have the resources, communities were contributing money and sending people outside of Nigeria to go and study so that they could have a competitive edge. That doesn't mean that they want to dominate. It's the same thing that is happening today. Many people send their children abroad because they want them to be competitive in a very competitive world for opportunities. Now, it was in doing this in the 1950s that Professor Bako was talking about, that they eventually overtook the Yoruba in education. I have addressed this issue also in my book, The Igbo Phenomenon, how the Igbos overtook the Yoruba in education. People don't want to believe it. Even today, there are still people who think that Igbos are not very strong in education in Nigeria. Those people are missing the point. They should go and look at the data, whether from StatSense or from Federal Ministry of Education. They will see that the Igbos have continued to pursue education to the end of the age. There's nowhere that you can't see them pursuing education, whether it's in China, whether it's in Ukraine, everywhere in the world. You see a lot of Igbos, young men and women, still in search of education. And even that of sending children to abroad. There are also many Igbos who understood the importance of education, that they didn't wait to be sent there by their parents or their community. They tried to smuggle themselves. Somebody like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, go and read the history of how he left Nigeria to the United States. It was all his own personal effort to better his life that he did that. But the results, look at the results. The result of that one-minded pursuit of education at that time, the Igbos was able to overtake the Yoruba in education. That was why when the University of Ibadan became a full-fledged university, Professor Kenneth Onwukadike became the first vice-chancellor of University of Ibadan. You know that University of Ibadan started as a University College Ibadan, established by the colonial masters as a campus of University of London. Once it became a full-fledged indigenous university, Professor Kenneth Dike was the first vice chancellor of University of Ibadan. Of course, that was part of the things that Akintola was complaining about, that Igbos were dominating University of Ibadan and all that. Then you have Professor Eni Njoku. Professor Eni Njoku was appointed as the first black vice chancellor of the University of Lagos in 1962. It's also part of that, what I'm telling you about the gain, the benefit from sending children to embrace education, to accept education for the development of the country. Now, Professor Bako is saying that Igbos sending their children abroad was to dominate Nigeria, not to develop it. But you cannot say that Professor Dike did not help in developing University of Ibadan. You can't say that Professor Eni Njoku did not contribute to the development of University of Lagos. You can't say that their purpose was just to dominate, not for the development. I do not agree on that. They contributed to the development of education in Nigeria and in the development of the professional cadre of several professions in this country. Now, it's also notable that as part of that gain, the first Nigerian university to ever award a PhD was University of Ibadan, and the first Nigerian to be awarded a PhD by a Nigerian university, which is University of Ibadan, was awarded to an Igbo, Professor Adiele Eberechukwu Afibo, a professor of history. He was the first person to be awarded a PhD in Nigeria, in Nigeria's history, in terms of university. No university has ever awarded a PhD in Nigeria until one was awarded to Professor Adiele Afibo by the University of Ibadan. He was the first person. You can go to the University of Ibadan and cross-check. The first Nigerian to be awarded a PhD by University of Ibadan was Professor Adiele Afibo. So, as far as I could see, how the Igbos came from behind and became a leading force in education should be commended, especially from somebody from a region where educational attainment is still a challenge, with over 70% of out-of-school children in Nigeria coming from the north. What I'm saying is this: Professor Bako ought to have concentrated on studying how the Igbos were able to do this in the 50s, in the 40s, in the 50s. In fact, the Igbos started knowing the importance of education from the 1852 or thereabout, and began to take advantage of it, knowing that that is the future. So what he ought to have done was to study how the Igbos were able to be sending their children, many of them poor people, sending their children to Europe and America in the 50s, and see how that kind of mentality could be translated into adoption in northern region, where educational attainment is still a challenge to this day, where, as I said earlier, 70% of out-of-school children in Nigeria are from the north, so that they can use that as a motivation to accelerate educational attainment in northern Nigeria, and not to use it, that his lecture, to demonize and reinforce the stereotype that the Igbo's essence of education was to dominate Nigeria. And to make it worse, he said, not to develop it. So the essence of the Igbos getting education was to dominate Nigeria and not to develop Nigeria. Now that, okay, let us assume without considering that was the procedure. But now that other parts of Nigeria are dominating Nigeria, how far? How market? What development has the years of the Buharis, the years of Murtala Mohammeds, the years of Shagaris, what development have they brought better than what the Igbos wanted to do? What development have they brought? Since the Igbo's essence was to dominate others and not to develop Nigeria. The essence of Igbo's education, pursuit of education in the 50s was to dominate Nigeria and not to develop it. I think he missed the point. What he ought to have done, the study he ought to have done, inaugural lecture he ought to have done, was to see how the Igbos rose from the backwardness of education, being that they didn't have access to education earlier, like the Calabars and the Yorubas, and yet they were able to overtake them in a phenomenal move that is outstanding. How did they do it? So that the North can copy it, so to reduce the level of illiteracy in the region and to increase the level of educational attainment, because educational attainment is still a challenge in the North to this day. That is why they have over 70% of out-of-school children in Nigeria today. That ought to have been the priority and not the other way around. That's my take on Professor Bako's controversial lecture. I don't know what you think. Whatever is your position on this, please let us hear from you from the commentary, from the comment box, so that we can also know where you stand and what you think is or should have been the priority of Professor Bako in his lecture about Igbo dominance, or about the Igbo relationship with northern Nigeria and all that. Thank you for watching this video, and if you are new to my channel, you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell. When you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, anytime I have a new video, you'll be among the first to know. God bless you. And please don't forget to like this video, because when you like it, Google will rank it hard and recommend it for more people. Thank you, and God bless you and yours.